Playing one instrument on a high level in the classical music business is already difficult. But playing two instruments on a very high level is even more difficult, especially because if you play more than one instrument, people doubt and question your quality in both instruments. Because how could you have possibly that much time to practice more than one instrument to achieve the level that is necessary in order to make a career in classical music? But that this cliché is not necessarily the truth proves my guest for this podcast episode, Sophie Druml. As a violinist and pianist, Sophie won several competitions, toured nationally and internationally as a chamber musician and as a soloist with orchestras, and toured the world as the pianist of the famous duo lea.violin since 2018. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Practice Room, the Classical Musician Podcast. Thanks for being a guest in my podcast. Very much looking forward to talk with you about so many interesting topics. Maybe we will start in the beginning of your musician journey. Like, how did you actually start playing an instrument, and which instrument was first?
I actually started with violin first, with like 3 years already. But it was not that serious yet. It was just playing around sort of thing. And piano, I started with 5. And I mean, at least that's what my parents tell me. I don't really remember, to be honest. Because a lot of times people say, yeah, with 3 years old, I heard this piece and I knew I wanted to be a pianist or something. Didn't happen with me. Just sort of started getting into it. And my mom's a pianist and my dad's a singer. So it kind of was a natural way to just play an instrument, I guess.
When you started both instruments, like also the second instrument came to it, did you feel already a change, for example, concerning practicing or whatever, that it got like more time intense?
I don't think so. It was kind of always normal and not very conscious on my mind that, oh, now I'm playing 2 instruments instead of 1, sort of thing.
So you basically never really thought about like the negative part, like that you cannot manage it time-wise, I guess, until someone questioned it at some point, no?
Yes. Or when I started to realize that people were either confused or they're like, wow, you play 2 instruments. Then I started thinking, what's
the problem with it?
Yeah, what's the wrong?
Which age you were when they started to question it?
I mean, that came later, I think, because a lot of children, they start 2 instruments and then at one point they either like one better or are better at one, or it just happens that, yeah, one keeps going and the other one doesn't. But that just kind of never happened with both my sister and me.
Your sister is playing cello and piano.
Right. And so then at a certain age, probably also I did a lot of Prima la Musica, it's a competition in Austria for children. And when I did that in both categories, then I already noticed, okay, something is strange to the people because they're like, wait, so what do you play now? It's like, what do you mean? Both.
How you manage it time-wise now that you became actually a professional musician in 2 instruments? Because I think for most of the people, the question is, I mean, the majority of the musicians or students would probably answer, yeah, I practice like 5, 6, 7 hours, one instrument, which is also sometimes a bit questionable if that's the most productive way to practice 7, 8 hours the same instrument a day. But that's like, I would say, the most common answer. So how you deal with that? Because obviously it's very time intense. It got even more time intense now that you are professional.
I mean, it is a very difficult thing, but I have to say, I did a piano competition once and I didn't practice violin for like 2 months. And it's not any less work. It's just divided differently. My time is divided differently. And I feel like the instruments really help each other. So it's not lost time for the violin if I'm practicing piano. Obviously, I can't play Sibelius Violin Concerto if I'm only practicing piano. But still, there are a lot of things that I find help each other. But still, I sometimes struggle. Like, I have never done practicing. And I have to choose a lot of the times, okay, what is more important now? Set priorities, because I can't do everything. But recently my teacher told me, and I've never looked at it this way, he was like, you have limited time, but it's a good thing, because then you have to work very well.
I read a lot of books when I had also some health issues from playing violin, like with my shoulder and whatever. And obviously I could not play 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I was limited, but for other reasons. And I read a lot about practice techniques and how to focus and mental preparation and whatever it is. And I realized that many times when I was practicing, I didn't focus 100%. I thought I was focusing, but it was just basically playing to fill up somehow the hours, but it was not really a focused practice. And my first teacher, she told me always, look, Lea, you can practice 5 hours and practice as much as in a very well planned 2 hours. So, and that's so true. And I realized that, I mean, I got into this typical, I don't know, a square thinking of I have to practice hours and hours and hours every day until my body said, okay, no, Lea, that's not your way. You're doing a break. And then I remembered those sentences from her, and I really started to rethink all this is practice. And I think that's exactly what you have naturally, because you have 2 instruments. So you basically have to manage and be productive 100% all the time. You cannot just waste 5-6 hours waste, if you call it like that. Waste was just playing and not really being focused during practice. So I think it's all a matter of how you schedule and plan your practice and how focused you are in the end. But do you realize sometimes, especially when you play like difficult works, that you need to mentally practice more in a way that, if I imagine now, I don't have to just learn 1 or 2 violin concertos at the same time, but like 4 concertos at the same time, but like different instruments. Do you feel sometimes it takes, let's say, a lot from your brain capacity, and it's really hard in the beginning, especially when you learn new pieces?
Yeah, again, I think I have to structure my time very well, but I've come to realize that I've tried so many times to really plan it and to be like, okay, I practice from then until then violin and from then until piano, but it doesn't work because I have to have a very good intuition, I think, on what I need right now. Also, how much of practice I need for which piece, and also to take care of my body, because after a certain point, like you said, then things start to go downhill, and that's not a good place to be. So I also have to be careful of that, because if I practice 6 hours piano, 6 hours violin a day, then that won't go well for very long. And mental practice is becoming, I think, more and more important. I do it a lot for memorizing things, or when I'm in the train, and because if I can play through in the head, then I know that I know it, for example. But I'm trying to also incorporate normal mental practice more into my practice routine, because it really brings a lot. You can even practice intonation in your head, basically.
I realize when I play pieces which are a little bit atonal, like especially more modern music, 20th, 21st century, and I'm not hearing what's coming next because it's not a natural note that I would expect there. It's mostly out of tune until I can sing ahead in my head. So I think that's what you also have when you or what you mean with mentally practicing intonation. So it's really true. But do you have special techniques, like any advices or experiences from your mental practicing, where you say that's something I do all the time and that really works, or that was a game changer or something?
So if I can play through the piece in my head, then I know that I know it. And otherwise, I try to really connect, or to imagine the feeling, how it would feel like when I'm playing right now. So to connect to the body and to feel these body sensations, to just imagine that I'm actually doing it in the moment.
I also read in your CV that which is actually not that easy to read, I have to admit, because there are so many things happening with violin and with piano. But have you ever or was it ever a goal for you to go to big competitions with both instruments, or did you decide you are more the performer than a competition player?
It's a tricky question. I mean, I've done lots of competitions, few big ones, and I'm actually in a stage right now where I'm thinking, okay, should I do more? Should I go for it? I think competitions can be great. They can bring a lot, obviously, if you get far, but just for your own development and really pushing yourself to the best. But obviously, competitions also have negative aspects to them, and it's a very different world from the performance world, which a lot of people don't get at first, because they think they're so linked, and if I win this competition, then I've made it, and it's not really always the case. But so I'm kind of trying to, because it's also difficult, because I have quite a lot of concerts, and in my mind, every concert is more important than a competition. But then if you want to prepare for a big competition, you need time, and you need also the focus, and then it doesn't really work if you play a concert here and in the next 2 days here. And
yeah, definitely. I mean, competitions are different in many ways. I have just had a recording with Dima Udovichenko. I don't know if you know him. He won the last violin edition of the Queen Elizabeth, and we recorded a podcast edition about competitions.
Okay.
And it was interesting, to talk to him about this, because obviously he's playing only one instrument, but no matter what he's like doing, just one instrument. But he did so many competitions, and he said exactly basically the same things, even if he was always mostly one of the prize winners or the prize winner, even of the biggest competitions. He said also it has so many negative aspects. And now he calls himself happily retired. So he's basically happy that this time is over. While at the same time, of course, he became the player he is also through the competitions. So yeah, I mean, every medal has two sides, but I think, for me, actually, I don't know, competitions, I was never really into it. I mean, I was really doing a lot of competitions as a kid, because we have the similar thing what you have in Austria, because you're from Austria. We have the same thing in Germany called this Jugend musiziert, like youth plays music. And I was doing it every single year.
Me too.
So, and it was always in January, the first round. I don't know for you how it is. Yeah. So my schedule was always like, I started in September or August to prepare the repertoire. Then like for 3 months, I was not practicing anything else. Then I had to, like 1 month or something, I put the pieces away and I played some other repertoire, because my teacher always said it's very important to relax the brain sometimes from the pieces. And then I would come back like in December, beginning of December, to it. And then January was the first round. In case I made it to the second, which was often, then it was another schedule to March or beginning of April. And then even the third round, the whole state round, is then like in, I don't know, end of May or something. And it was always a family project somehow. Like my parents knew, okay, January is again competition, and probably March again, and then May, and every year the same. And at certain point, something broke about it, that I never really forced entering to the big competitions, like Queen Elizabeth or anything like that, because somehow when I entered to university, it changed something radical about me feeling comfortable on stage. Because like when you enter to university, I don't know how it was for you, but for me it was really like a cut. And my first professors and teachers told me like, okay, practice open strings for half year and do just some Kreutzer etudes and some I don't know what and scales, and don't play at all. And maybe you are allowed in the end of the year to play one concert in university. And somehow this was such a break for me that I never really entered back into this, okay, let's play competitions, and somehow I'm really much more enjoying concerts and preparing for it. And as you said, for me, always concerts were more important and had more priority. And even small concerts, that's also something what I see from musicians, which is sometimes personally annoying me a bit, that when one plays a bit smaller concerts, musicians don't take it serious. It's like, it's just a gig. It's just, like I'm gigging around. And I'm like, okay, but if you play in I don't know, Berlin Philharmonie or something, or Elbphilharmonie in Hamburg, and 2,000 people bought their tickets, they are not necessarily much more worth than those 200 or 300 that paid the ticket, in a smaller concert hall. So for me, it was always important. But how is it for you when you enter to university? Or did you ever, or maybe before already, when you had your first professor, did it ever break your musical career? Like, was there a person where you say, that person stopped me or wanted to stop me from what I'm doing, maybe wanted me even to quit one of the instruments and said focused on that? Because I think there's also a lot in the classical music education system, which is very conservative still, and
For sure.
a lot of pressure.
I mean, first of all, to the big hall, small hall thing, I also think the attitude should be the same anytime, if you play for 10 people or 2,000. Because my expectations to myself, they stay the same.
Definitely.
Or at least that's what I feel.
For me too.
And to the other thing, yes, I mean, universities, unfortunately, a lot of them are still very conservative, and because I'm studying 2 separate studies, right? And I've gotten through fine, but it has been difficult at times to manage everything with the subjects, and it's not like a lot of times they are the most engaging or helpful with that, where you would think, isn't it a good thing? I mean, I don't know, but that can be tricky. And or a lot of times people are very skeptical of me playing 2 instruments, or also my sister, because there's kind of this perception that you can only be good at one thing, which I don't think is true. Obviously, you can't do 100 things. It's better to do one thing very well than 10 things like mid. But still, I think the more inspirations you have in your life, the better than just biting down on one thing. So I've had a lot of people being skeptical, also teachers at first, like, does that really work? Like, do you have time to practice? Isn't it better if you just focus on this? And then obviously each teacher wants me to focus on the other one. But a very positive thing until now, nobody has said that it doesn't work after they've heard us.
Okay.
Which is a good thing. I mean, I wouldn't care if they thought otherwise, but yeah, there are a lot of people that at first they're like, no, I can't work. Like, what are you doing? And you're wasting your talent or whatever. But then most of the time, or actually all the time until now, I could convince them. But I'm lucky I've never really had super negative experiences. Just once at a competition, but that was just piano. I was very sick and I still played with fever, and it was not my best performance. And I had a jury talk, and she basically told me, like, what are you doing? This is amateur, you should not play. I was like, okay, thank you for the constructive, uplifting feedback.
How old were you when that happened?
Maybe 19 or something.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's unfortunately a very common tone in the classical business, even to a 19 years old young person. So yeah, I mean, those comments can be very discouraging, and I'm always hesitating between you need to be prepared for the tough life that classical music brings with it, or generally the music business. It will take a lot from you. So there are those theories, or I also heard these sentences from many professors. Yeah, in case I break you, then you are not strong enough to survive the business anyway. And I'm still more on the parts or on the side of the medal that says I'm not necessarily agreeing with this. Because I mean, yes, the music business is hard, but being prepared for a hard business doesn't necessarily mean one has to enter totally broken, whether it's mentally or physically or whatever it is. So I think there are different methods, and luckily more and more teachers are also seeing those perspectives. But yeah, also these jury comments. I mean, I think at any level, it's common. Like at any, whether it's the biggest competitions or a bit smaller competitions, it's always. I also once had an entrance exam that was also very interesting. It was actually like a similar comment, but not necessarily about, or in that time, not about my playing, but about the piece I chose. So I wanted to enter to another, oh wait, was it bachelor's or master's? No, master's degree. I wanted to apply for master's degree, and I had my entrance exam. There were like 3 people sitting and the accompanist, and then we had to, of course, in advance send the program, the repertoire we are going to play. So I chose like one movement of a Mozart concerto, the 24th Caprice by Paganini, and then the first movement of Bohuslav Martinu's Violin Concerto No. 2. Which is, I don't know if you know the work. It's like a great concerto, and it's super nice music, and it's really not easy to play. It's minimum, I would say, as difficult as like those pieces like Sibelius or Tchaikovsky or whatever. So there was absolutely no reason to, not value it as much. But they had a very interesting view or point of view on that about what should be played in an entrance exam. And I came and I gave to the accompanist the scores for Martinu, and then he was looking at it. He was like, what's that? I was like, the repertoire I prepared? I don't know this. Then he turned the scores, he showed to the jury, do you know this piece? And they were like, no, we don't. What should that be? And then I was like, that's Martinu's Violin Concerto. Okay, you can pack those scores away immediately, play Paganini 24th Caprice. And it was like, I entered to this room, and in that moment, I knew I would play super bad, and I would just, I was just not capable of overcoming this whole atmosphere in this room. And yeah, some people might say, okay, then I'm too weak for this business because I should just, put on my mask and like ignore it. But this was so, I don't know, so disgracing the piece, the music, myself, without even hearing me playing one note, immediately like, okay, what is this music you chose? And this is not proper music. And now, from my perspective now, I'm like, that says a lot about them, actually. If you don't value Martinus Violin Concerto, I mean, he was a great composer. And if you react like that, it's just, I don't know, a lack of knowledge about this composer or whatever it is. So yeah, but I think really this attitude, what you also realized in this competition there when you were 19, I think, yeah, it's pretty common that unfortunately one talks pretty harsh with each other. But because you also talk a lot about your sister and you play a lot with your sister. So how can I imagine these concerts? Like, I mean, you play obviously, 3 instruments all together. So both piano and then you with violin and she cello.
We have a lot of recitals, getting more and more, where it's basically a normal classical recital, but we switch instruments. So we would play, for example, violin sonata, something for hands, break, cello sonata, violin, cello. Yeah. And that's a very fun thing for us to do because we get to play a lot of different repertoire and sort of shine light on it from different sides. But then it shouldn't be like a circus act. So that's also sometimes because people get confused. They're like, okay, what do you play now? Or when you said you read our biography and then it's like, wait, what's what? Also because my sister and me, we look kind of similar. So that also confuses people when they only see one of us somewhere. And then people think I also play the cello or something, or they think I'm just a pianist, but she plays violin. It can get very confusing.
Maybe you should think about some very unique hairstyle, both like one with super long hair and the other one with super short, so it's very obvious. No, but you said a very interesting thing. It should not be circus, and I think that people tend to put it, everything what people cannot put easily into one category, they easily start to put it into this category of circus and whatever it is. So which kind of reactions do you get from the audience? Except they're confused about who is playing what and how many instruments. But I think generally probably the audience is really much enjoying this, no?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of what I said before. They're mostly confused before when they read a program, or the thing is, and I honestly don't know why, but what we do, it just doesn't exist anywhere else. And I feel like it used to be more common a few years ago. That really great, I don't know, Grumio, for example, was an excellent pianist. Rostropovich also. Maris Jansons played piano, violin, conducting, Laurie Marcel. And now it's just very focused always on one thing. Most of the time people are very confused beforehand. And then if they listen to one of our recitals, it's like, oh, this is actually a normal recital. But just, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we joke and we say we're like a cheaper duo because we are less people or more instruments.
Yeah, true.
So you can hire us, get a discount.
Yeah, 4 in 1 or 3. No, actually, how many combinations? Because you can obviously also play solo pieces on piano. So you are having the piano soloist, the violin piano, the cello piano, the piano 4 hands, and the violin cello duo all in one package. It's pretty cool, it's, I think it also gives you a lot of artistic freedom, what to do in stage and which kind of repertoire to discover. And obviously, it's great that it's your sister anyway. Although I can imagine, is it ever difficult to play that much with a sibling? Because I think already, for example, when there are partners like in a relationship and they are having a duo, it's difficult, one argues also in rehearsals to separate it from the actual private relationship then. So how is it for you and your sister? Did you ever have like a cries in your combination that you said, okay, maybe we need to split a bit for some time and do our own stuff, or how you develop that?
I mean, crisis not that we say we have to split, that not, but obviously it happens that we argue in rehearsals because we're just also so close and we don't need a lot of words to feel the other person, and that has good sides and also not so good sides. Like if you rehearse with someone you don't know so well, then the way you talk is probably much more polite than with your sister, where you can just be like, this sounds bad.
Yeah, definitely true.
Yeah, but we're also trying to find the good way there, because obviously that's a great thing that we can be so honest and that we really demand the best from each other. But then also sometimes when we have a rehearsal and one of us is tired or not in a good mood or something, then you show that more than with another person, and then that you still stay professional and this is our rehearsal time now. And I mean, I remember my mom used to, when she started piano, her mother taught her. And they had this system in the US that when my mom had her piano lesson, she would go out the back door, come in the front door, and have her piano lesson with her teacher. And then when she was done, she would go out again and come back in the house, and then she was her mother again.
I see. Yeah, I have once heard about she was also a pianist, married to one of the concertmasters of a big orchestra, and their son was also becoming a pianist, and she was also teaching him, and she did a similar system. She would even wear some wigs. Like she had like a wig that like when he was little, that she would be like, okay, now I'm the teacher, so now I'm allowed to talk like more strict with you or whatever, because now I'm, I don't know, Miss whatever she calls herself with the wig. and then like taking off the wig, and then she would become again mama. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely challenging. Since my parents are not musicians, actually no one in the family, I didn't really have this, that my parents could say a lot or practice with me or whatever it is. But I had my first teacher, this Russian teacher, she would always tell to my mom, like, okay, you have to sit in the corner of the room, write everything down what I'm saying. And then you have to tell that to Lea at home when she's practicing, because she cannot remember everything and she has to take care on, I don't know, the violin position and her bow, and she cannot check everything. So you have to sit there and check it and read what I said in the lesson. So she kind of got forced from this teacher to actually be part of the practice sessions as well, and to overview also how long I'm practicing and whatever. But I remember we had a lot of arguments. It was really not easy. I mean, she was not wearing a wig, or I was not entering through different doors. So maybe that was the issue. But yeah, it was definitely not easy. And I think exactly what you also said, of course, you talk differently to each other when you have a private relation. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's tough in a way to separate this thing, because one can get really emotional and personal, because, I mean, obviously one tries the best. And then if, I don't know, your sister tells you, okay, that was pretty bad what you did now. And we haven't talked about one, I would say, thing that's probably for most of the people the most known thing that you did with piano. You were touring since 2018, if I'm correctly, with Two Set Violin, like probably the most famous violin duo existing right now. And you have been touring with them as a pianist. But how did that happen?
Coincidence, actually. I mean, I've always been a fan of theirs since kind of the beginning when they started. And they did their first world tour. I mean, for anyone who doesn't know, they're a violin duo. They're both YouTubers, comedy direction, but always with head. So not just stupid, silly things. And they were on their first world tour in 2018. And I actually already had tickets for a concert in Vienna. And back then they played with a different pianist in every city, which is crazy. And always announced on social media, hey, we need a pianist for this city. Is anyone interested? And my sister saw that and showed it to me. And at first I didn't want to do it. But then they kind of, not forced me, but they were like, it would be fun, no? Just try. So I applied and I sent my videos, and then Brett responded and said, let's do it. And then the funny thing was, on the day they arrived at the airport in Vienna, their tour manager at the time asked me, hey, could you pick them up from the airport? And I was like, sorry, I can't. I have a violin recital. And then a friend picked them up and brought them to my violin recital. And that's the first time I saw them, and they were like, wait, this is our pianist for the show. And yeah, since then it works very well between us. We're also great friends, and I also play violin in the show sometimes, which also kind of freaks the audience out. Yeah, and last autumn we were in the US. Now in March we were in Europe. In June we go to Australia and New Zealand. In August probably Hong Kong, September Taiwan, and then it's finished. It's a great thing for me, and in general, I think it's a great thing what they're doing to bring classical music to people who have never had anything to do with it, and to young people. It's really astonishing in the concert halls because they're almost always sold out, and all kinds of people, young ones, old ones, professional musicians, people who have never even heard anything classical. And a lot of fans also did come and say, I've wanted to stop my instrument, but because of you I didn't, or stuff like this. Very, very nice to hear. And yeah, it's a great thing for me also to play in great big halls across the world. And yeah, I wouldn't say it's my main thing, but it's always a great project and I always enjoy it.
Did it change your point of view on the traditional classical business? Because obviously the traditional classical music concerts are very old-minded, let's say. I mean, most of them, very traditional. Some would call it stiff. So it's really like you have a lot of rules to follow, both audience and players. Did it change? Because obviously what two-set violin is doing is totally different, talking on stage, moderating, doing jokes, playing, integrating the audience. So all these kind of things that are like a no-go zone in the traditional classical music concerts. Do you feel that it changed, that you also implement some of those things, or you moderate concerts, or it's harder for you to play the traditional music, traditional classical music concerts? Or would you say you are still fine with both elements and you still prefer classical music concerts, the traditional ones?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't say prefer, it's the two very different worlds. The first time I really noticed was because in the two-set shows, obviously the audience is very loud, and when you come out on stage already, they freak out kind of.
Yeah.
And the way they applaud and standing ovations and everything. Not that we don't have that in the classical music world, but then when I went back to my own concerts for the first time, and just the volume of the audience was like so underwhelming all of a sudden, like.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, it's great also to talk on stage. Before doing two-set, I was always so nervous if I even had to say one sentence in front of the audience. Like, I was much more nervous to talk than to play. And now it's totally fine because I've had so much experience doing it. And I think I've also just learned how to feel an audience very well and to connect with an audience with no matter what you do, because you have to do that in a normal classical concert just as much as when you talk to the audience or do comedy but it's just very nice also to experience the immediate reactions of the public, or when they laugh, or when whatever happens. And I definitely think that the normal concerts could use more of this energy. And of course there are rules and there's etiquette, but yeah, it doesn't have to be too stiff.
Yeah, I think especially this moderation part is a very important part to communicate to your audience. It's exactly as you said, this to feel the audience. Because I think I moderated my first concert when I was like 15. And since then, I have basically never stopped it. Sometimes I was kind of forced to not do that because whether the organizer or other co-musicians said like, look, nobody talks. We are serious. We don't we don't do these kind of things on stage.
We don't talk.
Yeah, exactly. We don't talk at all. We don't smile. We don't talk. We just go play, go down from stage, and that's it. But I don't know. I feel always or now more and more uncomfortable in these situations, and I pretty much, I would say, deleted those type of concerts from my schedule by my choice, because I just feel that I don't feel comfortable when I feel that the audience is not comfortable. And this feeling of comfort, I don't feel in majority of the classical concerts because of the etiquette, because of this not cuffing clause, which is somewhere unwritten, and then in the second movement or after the second movement, everybody starts to cuff like they haven't taken a breath for the last for the last 30 minutes. And I always feel we want people to feel things in our concerts, and I feel that if I don't give them the space to do that, I mean, I have artistic freedom on stage, but I want them to have emotional freedom in what they experience. And that cannot happen in this kind of super controlled surrounding that most of the classical music concerts are for me. And that's why I also feel very weird always when I'm forced in this situation. I remember I played like some Korngold piano trio and Brahms piano trio, and in one concert, and there was obviously no moderation, nothing. It was just a strict conservative concert. And I felt so bad after the first piece, like somehow, because I felt that the audience is so far while they were sitting, like, I don't know, the first row was 5 meters from me. And I think that a big problem in classical concerts is actually this atmosphere, what really keeps people away from it. What do you think, like, about the future of classical music, especially with formats like what lea.violin is doing, etc., which are obviously very, very popular, whether they are playing classical music or not, but people come there because they feel comfortable, they can identify themselves with the musicians, they know who they are. That's also, I think, what we lack many times, that we don't actually know who this person is. I mean, we know the CV, but we have no idea. We don't even know how the voice of this person sounds like. So what do you think about the future of classical music concerning all these things about the etiquette and the formats?
Obviously a very important subject. And I do see a development in many concert houses where I can see differences. Some concert houses that are very old-fashioned, always inviting the same soloists, same formats, everything. And then there are concert houses who really try to bring innovative formats while also keeping the traditional ones. I think it's important, not that you just change everything, but to just have a very varied program, varied roster of artists and interesting programs. And there's a thing at the Wiener Konzerthaus that they started doing, which I think is a really cool idea, is that they incorporated classical concerts with clubbing afterwards. I mean, I don't go clubbing. I've never really been interested in that. But the format is you have like a 1 hour concert, classical concert in the big hall. And after, in the little halls, there are DJs and techno and whatever. But then just a totally new audience gets access to classical music who would never have gone there before, in an atmosphere that is not too stiff and not too... Because a lot of people, I think they're just afraid that, this is not my world, I don't fit in here, and people will look at me funny, and I don't know the pieces, I don't know who's playing and stuff like this.
Did they change also the classical concert, this 1 hour classical concert, or is that the normal traditional classical concert?
Pretty normal and traditional. I mean, last time I think the Houston brothers played, the piano duo, and it's classical pieces, normal class. It's just not 2 halves, it's like 1 hour, but also with orchestras and a normal classical concert. But they have to go listen to that. They can't just go to the clubbing.
I mean, that's great. That I totally agree. That's great. And I think it's a good beginning, but I'm still thinking that why nothing is changing in the classical concert part, because, ideally people don't go there just because they want to dance and drink something afterwards, but they go because they actually like the classical music concert experience. So they also check out other classical concerts where to go. But if that part is still so traditional, it might not really influence and change the opinion that people actually have about classical music.
Yeah.
So definitely, I mean, it brings a new audience, but if it's really like in a sustainable way, brings them back also afterwards for other classical concerts, I don't know if that's working, but I see that mindset like in many places that they, or concert venues, festivals, that they try to implement just completely new formats next to the classical business or next to the classical formats, but the classical music formats, they stay untouched in a way. And I think that's the key where we still have to work on, that the actual formats, they are getting more accessible, whether it's through a normal moderation, even, soloists coming on stage and taking the microphone and moderating, or, whatever it is. And I think that there still can be done a lot of nice things and more modern things in order to be more accessible. What are your upcoming projects you're looking forward the most?
The next year's Beethoven year, which is kind of cool because I have 2 concerts where I get to play piano and violin with orchestra.
The Beethoven Piano Concerto and Violin Concerto.
Right. So in one concert I play Beethoven Piano Concerto number 2 and the 2 violin romances. And then in another concert, the Beethoven Violin Concerto, which I love.
That's not a too easy program to learn.
No. I have to start soon.
I find it very cool that you kept your way and you really stayed with it, and you are now a successful national and international soloist and chamber musician both. And I think it gives you a lot of nice opportunities, and whether you will do that forever with both instruments, but neither or, I think it's just great for you to have both, and to explore also so much repertoire. I mean, I always admire piano repertoire. I'm a huge fan of piano anyway, so it's just great. I'm always imagining, I can't do really a solo recital if I don't want to play Bach or Paganini or Isai. But if I would play piano, I think I would definitely, yes. Yeah. But yeah, thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you
and
so much.
Otherwise, for the ones who are listening, thanks for listening wherever you are, whatever time it is. Hope you enjoyed it and had some great time listening to us. Enjoy practicing in case you're a musician yourself. In case you are a multi-instrumentalist as well. Here you got the perfect example now that it can work also for a career as a classical professional musician. So see you maybe in the next episode. Bye bye.